Hi, everyone. Welcome to Courage Uncovered. Today, the topic is life as a stay at home mom with a narcissist. I want to talk to you about the realities so many women face, but very few people talk about. What's it really like to be a stay at home mom while living with a partner that is a narcissist? Today, I want to share my story. I want to share it with honesty and share with you what I've learned, what broke me, how I've been able to rebuild myself, or should I say, how I continue to rebuild myself after having lived through that experience. And also, really want to do this video just to share how important it is to speak up on these stories. Because for myself, for example, I was married from August of 2007, and my divorce was finalized this past March. I know for many years I was seeking information, trying to find out if other people were living this life like I was, and I just couldn't find anything that fit quite the bill of what I needed. So hopefully through this experience, through this video, you will find value and you will feel that you are not alone, that you are not trapped, and that there is another side to this. Right? So the first thing I want to talk about is, what was life like being married to a narcissist, being a stay-at-home with children and living with a narcissist, my day-to-day? Well, simply put, every day was a minefield. Every single day. Now, a particular narcissist that I dealt with would be referred to, I think, by some as a covert narcissist. So he was not boisterous or very loud. He was the guy that when you saw him was very charming, very kind, seemed very patient, seemed very understanding, seemed very helpful. However, how did that translate in the household? Well, not very well, right? So on the surface, it did look like we had this awesome relationship, right? Because we didn't have these loud fights and violent outbursts and just tearing each other apart. We didn't have that. I didn't experience that, so I can't speak to that. However, what I do know is every single day I would wake up and feel like I was literally walking on eggshells. And I'm sure some of you have probably heard that expression before. And it was simply because I did not know what to expect. Every day I would get up. We were blessed to have 3 children. Our children have very large age gaps between them. Just because, honestly, I didn't know after I had my first kid if I even wanted to try having a second kid, because it was just that exhausting. I remember with my firstborn, when he was a baby, just the simple fact of nursing him. I had my firstborn when I was 21, and I was in my last year of university. And so there was a lot going on, and I have a new baby, and I knew, because I am African, Congo, and I was raised by an American mom from Sweet Home, Alabama. And so I know in Africa, when we lived there, I used to see the moms nursing their children. For me, it was just a natural concept that I was going to nurse my kid. But this man, when I made the decision to nurse my kid and I started nursing him, I remember he looked at me with this look of disgust and utter shame. Like, how could you nurse him? You're hurting the baby. It's, you're destroying his immune system. So clearly it was coming from a place of ignorance. But for me, I was so hurt because, I knew that I was doing the best thing for my son. And here was the person who was supposed to love my son as much as me was challenging this notion of me wanting to nurse my kid. And so I was made to feel guilty. Another instance, with this new baby, I'm going to school, and he was going to school too. So we were both going to school. But somehow, his school time was more important than mine. His rest time more important than go to school. Any of my people out there who are college graduates, when you're taking 21 credit hours, it's not easy. And 21 credit hours with a baby is certainly not easy. And this man would go to the gym with his friends for 8 hours, spend 8 hours, right? And here I am at home trying to nurse this child, and the milk is barely coming out, and he's always eating, always eating, and I've got to study, I have exams, I have this, and so now I'm trying to find friends who could watch the kid, because he's always finding a way to be at the gym, he's always finding a way to be away from our home and taking care of the kid, right? So that was one. So just the exhaustion of it. And this continued throughout, the marriage, throughout the time period that I was a stay-at-home mom, which I was a stay-at-home mom from my son was born in 2005. Didn't really fully enter the workforce really until 2019, right? So prior to that, I would get part-time jobs here and there, but all the household chores were always my responsibility. I was always the one doing the meal planning. I was always the one going grocery shopping. I was always the one doing the cleaning. I was always the one making sure that the kids had their school uniforms, had whatever they needed. If there was a birthday party to be planned, I was the one doing that. If there was a teacher appreciation thing happening, I was the one organizing that. I was on PTA. I was doing all the things, right? I had a partner, but when I went to ask for help, it was, well, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, my mental health. There were always reasons, but as a mom, kids, they don't care what your reasons are. They need what they need. And so his priority was always his need first. I was made to feel guilty because it was like, well, you're not working, so why are you asking me to watch the kid? You're not working. And it was not always stated clearly, but the actions, right? I always say actions speak louder than words. And his actions were very clear and showed that I should not complain because he is going to work and I'm getting to stay home, right? Getting to stay home with a 2-year-old, getting to stay home with a baby. And so I should be just happy with that. Now, I don't want to sound ungrateful, right? I am absolutely thrilled, and I know I feel privileged that I did have the opportunity to stay home with my children. Not a lot of people get that opportunity. So I do give him credit to the fact that he did go to work. He did bring home the bacon, as they say, right? However, bringing home the bacon does not excuse you from being an active participant emotionally and physically in the home. And that was something that we dealt with a lot, So you had the guilt tripping part, but you also had the aspect of, okay, now that you have gone to work, now I'm feeling isolated, right? Because he decided that we needed to move. And so we moved from Alabama, where we were going to school, where he started his career. And now we're moving to Atlanta to be near family, his family, because my family at the time lived overseas. My parents, I'm isolated in Atlanta. I don't have family there. And I don't have a car because he bought a car that was a manual. And although I had learned how to drive a manual back in the day as a teenager, but I had not driven it in years, right? And so here we are in Atlanta with I'm pregnant with my kid. I have my older who's 5 years old, and I'm expected to drive this manual in Atlanta traffic. Now, if you've never been to Atlanta, I've never driven in the traffic, let me just tell you, it is horrendous, and it is extremely horrendous if you have to drive it in a manual vehicle. It is not the best. And so for 2 years, I was basically stranded at home because he had his job. We moved to Atlanta for his job, but so it so happens that his job basically had him commuting to DC weekly. So guess who was at home with the kid without a car, right? And so I'd have to wait for him to come home to go to the grocery store. God forbid there was an emergency. I didn't have a way to get there unless I called the ambulance, which I ended up having to do when I was pregnant with my daughter. When I was 8 months pregnant and fell down the stairs, I did call an ambulance to go to the hospital. But everything I had to do had to be in this really small space. Obviously, I couldn't keep the kids in the house going nowhere. So guess what I did? I had to locate places nearby that I could walk to. So if the park was 2 miles away, that's what we would do. We would walk to the park, walk to the school. Thankfully, I can make friends easily. So I would ask a friend, hey, when you go to the store, would you grab this for me? And so I just felt like I was very needy, which was crazy to me because I don't consider myself a needy person. But for several years, I just felt like I was in this cocoon of I was begging for help and I was never getting it. It was just constant, right? But I was still had to show up for my kids. I still had to be fully present, but I was absolutely 100% exhausted. I was exhausted. my middle child, she used to always say, Mom, you're always so tired. Well, you would be too if your day started at 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, and went all the way until 11 o'clock at night, sometimes 2 in the morning. So sometimes you're getting maybe 4 hours of sleep and then you got to start it over. But Mr. could have his naps, right? He always made sure he had his nap. On the weekends, oh my gosh, he could sleep in until 2 p.m. And if I complained, then I got the silent treatment. When my son was in kindergarten, I don't even know what it was, but he literally gave me the silent treatment nearly his entire school year. That, my friend, is emotional abuse, right? Being isolated, being made to feel guilty for requesting basic assistance, basic needs, and just having to carry a lot of the household chores and household activities, which as a stay-at-home mom, I accept. But I think what people seem to forget is even as a stay-at-home mom, you are still allowed to rest. Right? You are still allowed to rest. And I'm Catholic. I love my faith. And as a Christian, my faith does teach me that, on the seventh day he rested. So if God, who created the world and the universe, could rest, come on, can Alesea get a break too? Oh, no, no, no. That was not allowed, right? So no, the expectation was I was supposed to keep chugging along, whether I was tired or not. Thanksgiving comes around. I have 102-degree fever. I'm still in the kitchen cooking, and he is watching TV, and I've got one kid on my back, or, because in Africa we do carry our children on our backs. I love seeing the babies on the front, but my children never liked that. So I always ended up putting them on my back. And it just worked out really nicely for me. I was able to put them on my back. I could clean, I could cook, I could multitask, right? But I shouldn't have had to do that, right? Because my husband at the time, my ex-husband now, from home. He worked from home, your normal 9 to 5 hours, and his hours were quite flexible. So he had the dream job, or has the dream job, right? But even beyond that, that didn't matter. Because for him, the fact that he was working, the fact that he was financially the breadwinner, right? That I shouldn't complain, right? I got everything I wanted. Now, on the flip side of that, you have the isolation, you have the emotional abuse, but there's also a piece that a lot of people don't like talking about, and I want us to talk about this, right? The financial abuse, right? And so some people will say, well, Alesea, we saw you at the grocery store buying things, right? We saw you putting gas in your car. We saw you doing that. But what you don't understand is I was married to someone who was making six-figure salary. And out of the six-figure salary, right, he would give me $500 a month for groceries, to do my kids' hair, whatever the kids needed. It needed to come out of that money. So groceries, birthday things, anything needed to come out of that money. Now, keep in mind, I have children with a lot of allergies. And so making sure that they're eating organic food and foods that are not really processed, because my son's allergies at the time were so severe that he would constantly be sick in the hospital. So now, because he's withholding money, I'm having to cut expenses, which is fine, right? But guess what those expenses are coming from? They're coming from me not being able to get my hair done if I wanted to get my hair done, me not being able to get my nails done if I wanted to get my nails done. I had to learn how to do my daughter's hair. So now, on top of doing all the household chores, I'm also the hairdresser. I have to learn how to do the things, which it sounds all lovely, but they're literally 24 hours in a day. And if you are cooking all meals from scratch, which I did, if you are taking kids to all their activities, whether my kids, are super active, you got piano, lacrosse, violin, ice skating, swim, basketball, tennis, you name it, gymnastics, they're here, they're there, theater, scouts, and then you have PTA, and then you have lunch on Fridays with the kids, and your days quickly become very, very short, very short. And yes, I could have not put my kids in any other activity, right? But I want my kids to be well-rounded people, so I'm going to get some slack for that. But I don't apologize for making sure that my kids had access to all these programs that allowed them to be these amazing human beings that they are. And so, no, I could not do it all. And so I remember I cried when I was pregnant with my daughter, and before I went to deliver her, I knew that I would not have enough time with a newborn and a kid in first grade, and all the Atlanta traffic I was dealing with. I just would not have time to take care of my hair. And for any of my sisters out there, you all know our hair is a process, right? And so I just went and literally did the big chop. I chopped off all my hair so that I would have one less thing to worry about. If I wanted my nails done, I would wait until my mom or somebody else would send me the monetary gift. And that's what I would use to treat myself, right? My clothes, I wouldn't go shopping, right? My mom would usually gift me clothes. My mom loves shopping. And so that works out really nicely for me. She even bought this outfit for me. So thank you, Mom. My mom really helped me out, whether she knew it or not, by bringing me clothes because I just wouldn't have the time, didn't have the funds, and it was just the way it was, right? If I wanted to go exercising, oh my gosh, people are like, when this man met me, I was a size 6, I was petite, right? And people are like, oh, Alesea, you've gained so much weight, and da 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 da. It's like, okay, when do you want me to lose weight, right? Because when I signed up to go to the gym, and this man was so paranoid that every day I had to hear about how I was supposedly cheating. It got to the point where I remember I was at the gym with my trainer, and I was trying to lose all the baby weight from my first pregnancy. And then, and this man shows up at the gym, and I'm like, what is he doing there? And I remember he was just on the other side of the gym and just watching me with my trainer. And it made me so uncomfortable that I never went back. I felt so icky about it, right? And in hindsight, I shouldn't have stopped, but it was just every day the guilt trip of me wanting to take care of myself. And so I remember right before I had my daughter, I actually went and I started running, right? And I had lost so much weight. I was literally like 10 or 15 pounds away from my pre-baby's weight. I had, I was looking good. I was, lifting weights. I was doing all the things. I was running 13 miles. I was riding my bike 20 miles every Saturday. But in order to do that and still be everything that I could be, I had to literally get up at 5 in the morning, right? And be outside the door at 5 a.m. I had to make sure that I was up before he was, because if I was up after him, he would not watch the kid. He would come up with a reason as to why he could not watch the kid. Like suddenly he had an important meeting, I guess at 6 in the morning, right? So those are the kind of things that let you know you're in an emotionally abusive relationship. So what did I learn? I learned a couple things, and it took me several years to learn these things. So if you are in a process where you're like, why did I not know this? Why did I not feel this? Why did I, give yourself grace, right? It is not innate, because it is unbelievable how insidious, right, their action, the narcissist actions can be, right? It starts very small, and then before you know it, you're like, what happened? I didn't realize something was wrong until year 3 of our marriage. Year 3. Now, let me rephrase that. I knew something was off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But I did not know it was emotional abuse until year 3 of our marriage, when I remember being at my general practitioner's office, and I was like, I'm just so exhausted. I'm so tired. And at that point, I was severely anemic. I was just worn out. And she was like, tell me about your day. And I was like, I get up in the morning, I cook breakfast, I do lunch, I take the kid here, I do this. And she was like, so when do you rest? And I was like, well, when I go to sleep. And she's like, at what time is that? It's like, well, usually I try and go to bed at 10, but then he wants to start talking. And sometimes he won't stop talking until 4 a.m. Dear friends, when a person prevents you from sleeping, right, that also is abuse. I didn't know that, right? And he would do that often. Like, he would wait until he knew I was dead tired, and that's when he wanted to have a whole conversation over the most asinine thing, something completely ridiculous. And suddenly it was the most important thing we needed to talk about at 11 o'clock at night until 4 o'clock in the morning, right? So my friends, if you're dealing with that, that's abuse, right? That is abuse. But going back to what I learned a couple things, right? And thank you to my general practitioner, but also thank you to my therapist, because when I started going to my therapist, and oh my gosh, the scales started falling off. Now they didn't all fall off. Because I guess I had still that denial going on, and you might be there. You might be living that denial, and and give yourself grace. It's okay, right? This is your journey to rise, to have courage, and to live with purpose. But it is personal, right? So don't feel like, oh well, it took her 3 years, and let me road map with her life. No, 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 no. This is your life. This is your situation, and so please do not feel like I am judging you, or anyone here will be judging you. I learned to accept that my experience was not okay. And that was the hardest thing, right? To get to that place where, oh my gosh, this is not love. This is not how you should feel when you're being cherished. This is not okay. Right? But the second thing I learned was it's not my fault, right? The emotional abuse, I did not cause the emotional abuse. There was a person who made the conscious decision to isolate me. There's a person who made the conscious decision to make sure that I was exhausted by talking throughout the night or coming up with ridiculous issues that were non-issues and ignoring me and being passive aggressive. That is not my fault. But the most important thing I learned, and I hope you will take this, because this truly, truly freed me and helped me, for better or worse, start my journey to freedom. Because this is what I call it, my journey to freedom. It was accepting that I was not responsible for this person's happiness. As much as he was trying to make it seem like if I didn't do this, and if it wasn't like this, if my behavior didn't meet his standard, etc., then I was the reason he wasn't happy, right? And thus I should be suffering through silent treatment. I should be suffering through financial abuse. I should be suffering through whatever else, kind of abuse is out there, right? No. It is no human person can be responsible for another human being's happiness. We all have to choose to be happy, right? I do believe that happiness is a choice. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. So please don't sit here and say, Alesea said, I just have to decide I'm happy and boom, 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 I'm happy, right? That is not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is you do not have ownership on happiness, right? You are not responsible for another human being's happiness, right? And finally, the other critical thing I learned in that moment, after 3 years of marriage, I cannot emphasize that enough, that he was not going to change. That was who he was. And there's this song, oh my gosh, I can't remember the artist. I think it's K. Michelle, I think her name is. And she said, you can't raise a man if he wasn't raised before you. And wow, like at first I remember like when that song came out several years ago, I was like, what in the world is she talking about? Like, why are we trying to raise a man? But boy, hindsight is 2020. And now when I think about those lyrics, I'm like, girl, you were onto something, because yeah, if his emotional needs were not met before you came to his life, if he didn't learn how to treat a woman with respect and dignity, if he did not learn how to be the husband you need him to be for you, from his family of origin or wherever he came from, right? You can't teach him that. You're not that person's mother, right? If you have your own babies, those are your babies. Those are the ones you need to teach those things to. There are so many other things that you could be doing with your time, and raising a grown man is not it. Okay. And so once I learned those things, it's not my fault. He's not going to change. I'm not responsible for his happiness. And what I'm living is not okay. That just empowered me, and I hope it will empower you as well. Yes, I stayed in my marriage much longer, but the trauma, I was able to create some boundaries for myself. He didn't need to know about them, that allowed me to, quote unquote, manage what I was living through. In hindsight, I should have just left, right? But at the time, I didn't have the option to leave. And I'm sure several of you can relate to that. I didn't have money, right? I was a stay-at-home mom. I couldn't open a bank account because, how was I going to put money in it? He didn't want to do that. My family was overseas. I'm, in Atlanta at the time or in Alabama at the time. Where do I go, right? I don't have the resources. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. I had to find ways to manage, and that's where I started to manage. But I know several of you have a couple of questions, right? Because you're like, Alesea, you mentioned you went to college. Alesea, you mentioned all these things. You seem like you kind of had your wits about you, right? That's what I'm thinking you're asking yourself. If I'm wrong, please put in the comments, hey, Alesea, that was not it. That was not my question, but here's my question. And I'll be happy to answer those for you and address those. But I did learn that even though I am college educated, right? Abuse doesn't care if you are college educated. Abuse does not care if you're well. I come from a pretty middle class family living all over the world. Abuse doesn't care if you're culturally aware. Abuse doesn't care if you've, eaten caviar or you're eating cheeseburgers, right? Abuse doesn't care, right? But your narcissistic person cares who you are. Your narcissistic person sees the empathetic person that you are, because I am a very caring person, right? Students gave me flowers for my birthday and I was bawling, right? Because I'm like, oh my gosh, these teenagers thought about me, right? Abusive people look for people who are nurturing, right? I'm that person. I want to see everyone win. Right? Abusive people love that because they're like, that person, they're going to be there for the long haul because they want to see you win, right? They're someone willing to compromise. Now, I don't know. For me, I kind of struggle with that. It's not that I am willing to compromise, but there's certain things. It's not that I'm willing to compromise just because, I'm just going to, let you do whatever you want to do. But even throughout my marriage, there were a couple of things that I was very firm on. There were a lot of things that they didn't matter to me. And so I didn't really put my foot down because I honestly, genuinely did not care, right? But I knew like my boundaries. To cheat on me, I'm out. And he cheated, so I left, right? So there was the big ticket item, family values, things like that, that I was certainly uncompromising about. But for the most part, for day-to-day thing, I was like, I'm going to pick my battles, and that's not it, right? And so I do struggle with, they look for people willing to compromise. So I guess I was compromising. That's something I need to still come to terms with. As you can see, I'm still on my journey too. But I honestly don't think I was compromising. For me, I didn't care about those things, right? They didn't matter. They weren't that significant to me. But now that I know that a person like that exists, right? Whether I care about them or not, I'm going to be very clear. Like, that's not going to be okay for me, right? We live and we learn. So I hope you'll live and you will learn too, right? Because knowledge is power, right? Therapists helped me gain that knowledge. My doctor helped me gain that knowledge. And so I'm hoping that this video would also help you gain some knowledge so you can have that power within yourself as well. And so that kind of leads me into, then how did I start my healing journey? And I kind of hinted at that, right? Boundaries, right? I began setting small boundaries, right? So whenever I knew that he was very cyclical, meaning he would, one day he got into, let's say, fishing, which he did, right? So every 60 to 90 days, it was a new interest that he would obsess over, right? We had fishing, we had skateboarding, we had photography, we had, you name it, he probably tried it, right? Whenever he'll get passionate about something, and suddenly all of us had to be passionate about it. And I just set a boundary like, nah, that's not going to be my jam, right? And so my go-to response became, when he got and did something, I'm like, oh, I'm so happy you're doing that. Let me know how that goes, right? And I would go once or twice. But the fishing thing, for example, I went once because this girl does not like fishing. I love fish, but I don't like fishing. So forgive me, people. Hey, we don't have to all like the same things, right? But that was a boundary that I created, right? Like I didn't have to sway with him whenever he swayed, right? I could just watch him from the sideline and that was okay. And he could get upset if he wanted to, but that was okay too. All right. Setting those boundaries. There's also one thing I did, and you will see here. I don't have it with me, but I kind of have it here, right? There's this, but I also have like this really fancy diary that I use, right? Journaling, writing my thoughts. And because I knew, narcissists are nosy, right? Because I knew from starting dating him, I remember one time, red flag I didn't pick up on, he read my diary. And I was really offended. And so I started writing my diary in French because he doesn't speak French. And then I just stopped because I was just like, I don't, it's my privacy and I felt so violated. And so I just stopped. But over the years, instead of just journaling, right, I would write favorite Bible verses, so words of affirmation, right? I would write what positive things happened, right? And so even when it comes to journaling, you don't have to do it the traditional way of doing it. You got to, whatever you do something that works for you. Do something that is safe for you and do something that makes you feel good inside. Okay? Because this is for you. This is your healing journey. So documenting your reality is so important. But, if you got to do it in codes, for me, I would use poetry. I had a system and it worked for me. So oftentimes you might look at my journal, you'll look at it, it's like, what is going on? I know what's going on, and that's all that matters. Finding a safe space to talk. So especially when my little ones were little, you can feel so isolated just being around babies and toddlers, right? Like in the house, no adult to talk to. I mean, people who have jobs, daytime jobs, and work third shift or whatever. When they go to work, they meet other adults. There are other people they can speak to, right? I didn't have that, right? It was me and my oldest child, or me and my middle child at the time, just all day baby talk, mommy talk, going to the playground, cooking, cleaning, doing all the things, and it's very isolating, right? So I joined a mommy group, right? A group of stay-at-home moms. It was a very diverse group. Some of them we had nothing in common. Several of them we did, right? And till this day, I'm still friends. Our kids have graduated high school and they're at university now, and we're still very good friends, and that was a support system. So find your tribe, find your people, find people, adult people that you can feel safe talking to, right? Build your community because narcissists love for you to be isolated. Whether to do it knowingly or unknowingly, it doesn't matter. Isolation is isolation. So find and build your community. And the other thing that I did was I did the things I loved, right? I love volunteering, right? Feeding the hungry, spending time doing Big Brother, Big Sister. I'm involved in so many organizations, teaching catechism at church. I just poured myself into all the things I'm passionate about because I'm not just so-and-so's mom, right? I'm Alesea. I'm Alesea with a personality. I'm Alesea who's goofy. I'm Alesea who likes to have a good time, who enjoys a glass of wine, who, I was Alesea before I became Alesea so-and-so's mom. Right? I was Alesea before I became so-and-so's wife. And so staying connected to that person is so very important. And too few of us do it. So reclaim your identity as a person who's not just a mother, right? Mother's an important job. That's one thing I love about my European friends. They love being moms and they're great moms, right? But oh my goodness, they still love being sexy and they still love being whatever. They still embrace their own identity. Their identity is not just a mom. Okay, and I encourage you to find what it is that makes you you. What is it that gives you that oomph in wanting to get out of bed in the morning, right? Find it, follow it. If it's dancing, go dancing. If it's whatever it is, right? Find that and do it. So just to quickly recap, right? Document your reality. The narcissist is very good at making it seem like what they're saying is true, that your reality is not truth, right? So it's important that you journal, that you write it down. Writing, putting it on paper makes it real because it's concrete, black and white. Like nobody can take that away from you, right? Finding a space to talk, find people, like-minded people, or even challenge yourself. I went to a lot of different meetup groups back in the day to find and build my tribe, right? I would go to things with that I didn't know anything about. I don't know how to quilt, and I went to a meetup about that because my grandma used to quilt, and I was like, oh, that would be really cool, right? And I suck at it. So that was not the jam, but I explored, and that's what I want you to do. Finally, it's okay to not have all the answer. Because oftentimes we feel like, well, if we're in our journey for healing, I need to know the why. Why did that happen? How did that happen? Where did that happen? I need to know. I didn't know, why did he do that? Da, 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 da. Yo, you're gonna make yourself crazy. Just stop. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take it back to my faith, right? In the Catholic Church, we often say the mystery of faith, right? And I remember at first it used to drive me crazy when I joined the church. I was like, y'all, if y'all don't stop with this mystery of faith, I don't even, stop playing. I need to know, right? And then I realized something. Why? Right? Because of the world, God created this amazing, big, beautiful world, right? And we as humans can just understand just this much of his magnitude, right? So me having all the answers never going to be possible, right? Me understanding all the answers never. I can't even understand calculus. Why am I going to try to understand why the narcissist did what he did? Like that? No, like. People, choose your peace. What is important is for you to know the truth. For you to know the truth that you were or are in an unhealthy environment. Period. That is where your healing begins. Right? And then you have to be brave enough to name it. This was emotional abuse. This hurt me. This broke me. Those are words that are so difficult, but so important. At the end of the day, and what's most important to me is I hope this message resonated with you. You're not alone, right? I'm creating this series to break the silence of what it means to be a stay-at-home mom and go into your journey of healing from a narcissistic relationship. I want to help you build strength, but I most importantly want to offer you hope. There's light at the end of it, right? Your journey doesn't need to be a straight one, right? Baby steps, you'll get there. If you feel safe doing so, I really would love for you to comment below. I see you. Or to share a little bit of your story, right? If you're a stay-at-home mom, right? What was your experience like? What and if you had the aha moment, what was it? What was that moment like for you when you realized this is not it? Right? Please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. We'll talk about boundaries, healing, and how to rebuild ourselves from narcissistic abuse. That's the part I'm most excited about, how to rebuild, right? We may be broken, but we are not going to stay broken, right? We're going to rebuild. So until next time, this is Courage Uncovered, where we rise with courage and we live with purpose. And my name's Alesea. Until next time, bye-bye.